Yeah, it went well. They had some very good conversation, and the stream was smooth setting up, which made me happy because I usually don't do that.
Oh,
So
by the way, we're live. So hello, stream.
hello.
Yeah,
Maybe
that was a cool chat earlier.
it was
Hearing
good.
from someone who actually made a Kickstarter
Yeah,
that was successful.
Very cool. Yeah, I wish I was able to join. I had a screenwriting class.
it's all good. And then copy.
I know someone who made a Kickstarter, and when it was a physical tabletop RPG thing, and they were handling all the fulfillment themselves. So they had hundreds of boxes to pack, and at one point, accidentally got a big old gash in their arm from their elbow to basically their wrist.
Oh,
Jeez.
Got a big old war wound out of it. I guess you could call
Kickstarter.
it like Kickstarter.
Man.
Kickstarter. Yeah.
I wonder maybe he got like a cool sleeve out of it though. I feel like if I ever got like a really big gnarly scar, I'd be like, cool, tattoo time.
Just make it something really, really rad. Like suddenly that big chunk taken out of your leg. Suddenly that's the belly of like a Snorlax.
Now we're talking.
It becomes a mouth. No. But oh yeah, one of the tips that was really good was if you want to give away like prints, like instead of doing, if you do like a poster, like you have to buy like poster tubes to ship them in, but like if you send them a map, like you can just like fold the map and they won't care. I thought that was really funny. Like for Kickstarter rewards.
That is fun.
All right. 7 o'clock. So, we have an announcement.
Yeah, I
made?
put one out
Cool.
a couple minutes ago. I didn't realize Val didn't put one out earlier, but we got it, so we can give people a couple minutes to trickle in since I sent that a little late. Yeah.
So I'm like I'm an editing proctor, right, for our like college's editing labs. And I think there's literally nobody here. I have to.
Is it the whole COVID thing?
Yes. Yeah, I think people are allowed to come, but like nobody really does. And I'm just here on the off chance that somebody does for me to be like, ooh, hello, fellow traveler.
Greetings, traveler.
Greetings, traveler.
Oh, wow.
I feel like we aren't taking enough opportunity to get weird in public spaces. Now that COVID is occurring, there is, as you mentioned, the whole welcome traveler dynamic. This is the time to make it. You wear a Venetian plague mask, carry a lantern.
Plague mask. Perfect.
Like the fact that we don't have old school gas lamp style lanterns that everyone's carrying around during during this cataclysm, right?
Missed
It feels like a
opportunity.
missed opportunity, and honestly, I am waiting for the gas lamp's day in the sun.
Wait, why would you use a lamp in the sun though?
Because it helps it to shine. You can't see its light, but what you can see is that it is a finely crafted piece of material.
Wow. Those are some words of wisdom. Thank you.
When you put it that way.
All right.
Well, that was all the game dev advice I had. Use gas lamps, everybody. Bye.
All right. Talk's over.
Oh,
Everybody
there
give
you
it
go.
up. No.
Oh, nice.
Kidding. But yeah, I think
Yeah,
we can go
actually,
ahead.
this isn't a game dev talk. We're just talking about how to use a gas lamp.
Lamps.
The
Okay.
tutorial.
Yeah, I think the gas lamp talk is over now. We can start. Go ahead and start the general meeting.
That's like,
Sad.
Sorry guys. If you're here for the gas lamp talk, you missed it. Anyway, yeah. Welcome to the general meeting, everyone.
wait, Grant, can you share your screen for the slides?
Wait, am I not sharing? Oh no, is it black?
Not on Discord. No, no, no. I think Twitch is fine, but
Oh.
you're not sharing your screen to the.
Oh, I'm
Discord.
not. Oh. Oops.
There you go.
Okay, thank you for that. Great. Welcome to the general meeting. Got some upcoming events. Dev nights. What really fun times to be had this Thursday. So come on down. If you're in a dev team, make sure you stop by. We probably I think the midterm kind of rush was last week for a lot of people. So hopefully, you just take some time to chill. Come on down. Next Monday we got another Unity workshop on Zoom, and you can learn about Unity editors, which is they're basically like you write code so that you can, not for the game, but for like making the game in Unity. Kind of cool. Makes the game design process much easier. All right. Here's the links. You've seen them. Join EGaDS if you're not a member. Shame on you. But we still love you, so please join. Yeah. There's the shirt. Great shirt. Excellent shirt. I should probably say that we're probably gonna be setting. We have a plan for like distributing the shirts. Since spring's looking pretty grim as far as school goes. So yeah. So if you're like on the fence about getting a shirt because you don't know if you'll get it, we will get it to you in one way or another. So yeah, this is still happening. And thank goodness too, because it's such a great design. And related orgs. Longhorn Gaming, Woodman Gaming. Great people. Here's just some, safety slides we're required to put in the presentation. Moving on, this thanks to our sponsor Zynga. Round of applause.
Yeah.
Woo! Yes.
We love
I'll
you.
say too,
Yeah,
those
Round of applause.
safety slides that Grant briefly mentioned, those are just like, the university technically requires us to share them, but it's mostly just, be smart, keep yourself safe, keep each
Yes,
other
thank you,
safe.
Mason.
Especially with COVID, like, it has resources if y'all scan the QR code that the university has. But we trust you all. Y'all are all great people.
All right,
so
scan the QR code.
yeah.
Get your phones out.
Yep.
Learn about safety. All
It
right.
is important.
Is the anime girl a part of the safety
This
slides
is actually
endorsed
our
by the
mascot.
university,
That's
or
our
is that
mascot.
ours?
She is.
Is she
She's
okay?
our.
EGaDS
She's
Chan.
giving out the info. Yeah.
She's great. We love you guys, Chan. All right. Any questions? No. Questions. Why is you guys so good? I can't answer that one. I'm sorry. It's a mystery. But nevertheless. Anyway, with all that out of the way, we can start our talk with Xalavier Nelson. Uh, he is a narrative designer at Devolver Digital. Really cool company. Uh, worked
Actually,
on.
I'm not.
Oh shoot! Delete. Delete. Wait. Wait. Do you want to correct the record right now on this
Sure thing.
information?
Hello, everyone. I'm Xalavier Nelson Jr. I am a narrative director working in and outside of video games. You might know me from my work on Hypnospace Outlaw. We are the caretakers in Airport for Aliens, currently run by Dogs or Skatebird. I have literally dozens of projects under my belt, as well as credits in tabletop, journalism, comics, and beyond.
Awesome. So, have you worked with Devolver? Maybe that's where I got it mixed up. Like, go ahead.
I've worked with Devolver in indirect capacities before.
Okay.
I've also drunk on their dime at like events, but that's about it.
All right. Cool. Well, yeah. Hypnospace Outlaw. I've seen that one. Really, that's a really interesting game. It's like kind of a love letter to the old, kind of, old web, I guess.
It's a Y2K. It's an
Y2K.
alternate universe Y2K era internet simulator. So if you remember what it was like to have modems that screamed at you instead of whisper quiet routers that still don't deliver internet as fast as they advertise, then yeah, you know the world of Hypnospace Outlaw. Weird localized internet communities. In many ways, Discord is a return to that dynamic that we saw at the time with BBSs and with our first steps into a wider intranet.
Awesome. Yeah, I thought the art style was also really cool. But anyway, aside from that, if you have some slides, are you just gonna talk?
There's a couple of ways we could handle this. I could more freestyle and just talk to y'all about how I got into the industry, what I've done, how I've done it, why I've done it. Or I could let y'all in on the secret and show you some secret slides relating to something I'm trying to talk to more and more people about these days, which is making smaller, better games, because the financial and production structures that our industry are built upon actually don't make sense on a fundamental level, and it's breaking people. It's destroying them.
Whoa, secret! Everybody's already excited about the secret slides. Oh, that's great.
Why have regular slides when you could have secret slides?
Secret slides. Great. So Twitch stream is dark right now. Do you want to start streaming on Discord, and I'll just
Sure. Let me pull up.
put that on the Twitch.
Pull up my Google Slides, press present. It's now full screen. And then I go to speaker night and I click share screen. And this should function.
Let's see. Awesome.
Yes, good.
Good.
Cool. These are secret slides, but you're getting top secret access to them, along with the entirety of Twitch, which I did not know about before. Hello. So, as I mentioned, I'm Xalavier Jr. I'm a narrative director, creative director, writer, and general person in games and beyond. I've worked on these games and more. My most recent release is Reigns Beyond, the next entry in the strategy narrative title played by millions of people. Reigns Beyond just released on Apple Arcade, and I have, in some way, shape, or form, touched about every piece of text in that game. It is a brilliant experience, lovely team behind it. I was a journalist for years, including running a column for PC Gamer magazine for 2 years. I've done work in tabletop, including making my own accessible setting agnostic system called Ellipses. Did a lot of work in comics that people seem to really enjoy. And in the before times, I go around the world doing weird games, giving talks, and generally being an eccentric human being. This talk is called Self-Funding Smaller, Better Games, and it is going live for Wordplay, the Wordplay conference in the near future. But y'all are seeing a modified version of it because it is particularly applicable for the experience not just of university students, but of anyone looking at entering this medium and the consequences of that decision. And I will preface this advice by saying that no advice is universal, including my own, even if it claims to be. How I got into games is at the age of 12, I pretended to be an adult so I could be a games journalist and get free games and review them on the internet. That is not applicable for most people, including most 12-year-olds, but that's how I got in. And recommending that as a career choice or a route into video games doesn't make a lot of sense. So, as I'm going to be discussing the topics in this talk, even down to the way I approach game development, I'll be very upfront about what pieces are unique to me or are not as universally applicable as one would think or like, and specifically attempts to focus on the portions that are more likely to be applicable to a wider degree of people. Speaking of things that are not universal, as an industry, we are still kind of chasing a model of success that comes from 2012. And of course, it doesn't just come from 2012. The idea of the whiz tech person or the whiz tech kid releasing that bombshell hit and blowing everyone away with their complete autonomy and creative vision and making a whole bunch of money off of a whole bunch of risk. That's a story that's been in computing since its beginnings, going back to Atari, going back to things like the Apple II, folks like Jordan Mechner and Prince of Persia and the original XCOM games. We've seen this story repeated over and over again. In the most recent version, enabled by digital distribution, is that seen in Indie Game and Movie, which I believe was released in 2012, was it? Does anyone remember the exact time that Indie Game and Movie came out? Whatever the case may be, Indie Game the Movie is a nearly decade old, or it's over a decade old, vision of what it means to be successful and creatively autonomous within video games. And everyone continues to chase that. All success is presented as instant, even when it isn't. In the case of Among Us, that is a game that came out 2 years ago. Everyone's playing it now, but it isn't an instant hit. It's a game that came out 2 years ago and had the opportunity to become a smash hit. Cuphead, as much as it was a giant creative and financial risk for the developers, there is an element of privilege inherent in Cuphead's ascendancy to now being in hot topic stores across the country, because this was a game that was repped and boosted and supported directly by Microsoft for years beforehand. We can talk about the smash hit of Firewatch, but that was a game made by the crew of one of the biggest nerd-focused podcast networks on the internet, Idle Thumbs, on top of their previous AAA experience. All success comes from somewhere, and most of that success is still incredibly built upon outliers. I didn't have the opportunity to take this model of success for granted because in my years as a journalist, one of the big things I would do is interview a lot of developers who told me stories that I could not share in print or web or otherwise, but they just had to get it off their chest. And I saw how many people with astounding games, with near miss chances, or with things which should have been surefire hits, fall into the waters of obscurity. So we're left between these two poles as people who are looking at these paragons as these examples to get into games. Either you become one of these things or you crash and burn. And in the interest of creating dramatic stories about people's rise and fall within games, we focus on the possibility of creating a crash and burn story and hope that by not looking at the possibility of crashing and burning, it isn't all going to fall apart. The indie dream as presented relies on an incredible risk to self. It says if you mortgage your house, if you get that loan, if you sacrifice your mental health, your relationships, and who you are as a fundamental human being, and you make the game, everything works. And we have more than enough cases to not just speak against that, but also to speak for those who have attained this success, to speak to how hollow it can be. I highly recommend looking at the statements of Alexander Bruce of late. Alexander Bruce made Antechamber. It came out on the heyday of Steam being more of a walled garden. It did well financially, did well commercially and creatively. It nearly broke the developer, and he took a big old step back, and he seems to have the way he talks about success is the way that a recovering addict talks about alcohol or heroin. It is as dangerous as it is alluring, as it is compelling, as it seems to be a goal in itself. And this culture of risk that is created means that we are producing an industry built on 3-year careers instead of 30-year careers. It's limiting even the amounts of games that we see. And what's presented as the alternative to this, or as an alternative dream, or as a way of realizing the dream, one of these directions is getting a publishing deal. And there's 6 general things that a developer wants from a publisher. They want funding, they want marketing, they want porting, they want localization, they want QA, they want legal support. And in return for getting all of these things, you're essentially making not so much a bet against yourself per se, but a bet against the project, because every single one of these things comes at a cost to you and is put under the umbrella of something known as recoup. Basically, for as much money as gets put into the game by the publisher, the typical arrangement of the deal, although this can change depending on the terms that you receive or negotiate. Everything is individual, especially when you get to publishing deals. But when you look at this, at most publishing deals, you have to earn above that recoup to see your first dime on a game. Or even then, your revenue share balance is severely skewed until you hit that recoup point. So let's say getting the legal support to clear the trademark, getting some localization so you have multiple languages, getting porting, your game can come out on the Xbox Series X and the PS5, having marketing spend so you can have edit ads and funding the game. Let's say all inclusive, that was just $200,000. That is $200,000 you've received from the publisher. When you receive a publishing deal, what you're essentially saying is, I bet that my game is going to make more than $200,000 and it's going to make it soon enough that after all of this money is spent, when I have to spend time on post-launch support, when I have to think about the impact this will have on my future, that game is going to do so much better than that $200,000 recoup point that I am going to be okay. And again, we get all of the examples of ways in which this goes incredibly well for the people involved. These are the things that are publicized. These are the publishers that are publicized. I'm not going to name out any specific names, but whenever an indie publisher gets a big hit, the indie publisher and the developer get a giant bump from it. However, what we don't talk about are the other 5 games in that publisher stable that didn't sell. We don't talk about the other 5 developers that never hit their recoup point, so they spend months working to get the possibility of their first paycheck on a game that they have developed, and they never get it, and they are in desperate straits as a result. we're risking our projects, we're risking our lives. So much of, even when we speak of getting a quote unquote traditional job in AAA in a funded structure, the options that are presented for enduring abuse, crunch, absurd marginalization, or tokenization, the number of rabbit holes that are presented as normal in having your career and entire life threatened to get the opportunity to work on games for a living is deeply, desperately unhealthy from the off. But this is presented as the goals. And the reason why it's presented as the goals is because everybody is focusing on the right-hand side of this chart. Everyone's taking the big bets because market success itself is exponential or non-existent, but we weren't going to talk about that. I directed a small project that released, I think, 2019, last year, called Can Androids Pray. The entire budget, I made it with Priscilla Snow and with Natalie Clayton. It was all told about 2 months of very part-time work stretched out over about a year and a half is what we spent on the game because we all kept our day jobs. We were all doing other things. And it released on PC, Xbox, Switch. It's coming to another platform in the very near future. And it sold really well. People really liked it. It has a good Metacritic. It's unexpectedly successful. And the entire budget of that thing was mainly paying Priscilla for her sound work. Aside from that, someone buys Can Androids Pray about every other day. It's $7 and minus platform fees. This is what I like to call pizza money, and we're going to be talking about pizza money more as this talk goes on. But pizza money isn't going to pay a mortgage. It isn't going to pay off a loan, and it isn't going to stunningly alter a life. So this project that was very cheap to make and now just make sure that the people involved can have pizza money and not worry about certain things as a result of having made it. That isn't big enough to be labeled a success in gaming terms, even if the profit to cost margin is 30, 40 times the price to produce it. We say that because if you make an Undertale, if you can manage to make a Spider-Man, if you are Take-Two and you produce Grand Theft Auto 5 and spread it across 3 generations of consoles, the amount of money that you can make is more in a single day, in a single hour, in the case of like Grand Theft Auto 5, is more than Can Androids Pray might make in its entire lifetime. 5 years from now, Grand Theft Auto will make in about 2 hours what we made on that entire game. This is the economies of scale that we're dealing with. And as much as they are compelling, they're also blinding because one Grand Theft Auto, one Undertale that sinks is the theoretical point of failure that destroys not just the lives of the people who make it, or of the funding parties, but of everyone involved in making it. Dozens, hundreds, thousands of people. I talk about pizza money because it is the state of no longer worrying about ordering a pizza once in a while as a treat. I love this concept because what it says is, what if we redefined our definition of success? Yes, there is a success that means you can quit your job and tell everyone to go screw themselves and spend the next 2 years making your next magnum opus. That is a definition of success. But there's also the definition of success where
You don't have to think about how much is in your bank account when you go and get a coffee at Starbucks, because you know that there's just enough there. You don't have to think about getting a Hulu subscription or of maintaining it, because, hey, about 5 people buy my tiny little game in a month. That covers Game Pass. I just don't have to think about having Game Pass anymore. Especially as I continue to run in ever more stratified circles in this industry, you realize how much the very poorest and very richest segments of our industry can clash and coexist together in the same space. You'll have someone who, at the age of a teenager, has managed to make millions of dollars standing in the same space, at least in the before times. Now they would be standing 6 feet apart, standing in the same space as someone making free queer twine games and releasing them on itch.io. These people are right next to each other in completely different states of life. And the more you talk to people who have made it, I came from and come from a deeply lower middle class background. The idea of someone having like a HBO subscription and like a Netflix, that to me was the idea of being rich. I have participated, and you'll have a group of friends who y'all just share a Hulu account and you don't talk about it because it violates the terms of service, or someone's writing on someone's parents' subscription account. And that is the conditions of the conditions and margins under which most people exist, under which you go to a dinner with your friends and then they're in a slightly different economic strata than you, and they're ordering up a storm, and you have this little bit this script running in the back of your brain saying, how much can I afford to spend? If we redefine our success and the cost of the games that we're making, not to risk our livelihoods, but to be enough to bring a compelling version of the thing into being and release it into the world and see what happens, not only are we not risking our entire livelihoods for a single project, we're also creating the possibility for a different version of success. Pizza money, subscription money, not thinking about ordering in because you can afford to do it every once in a while, because your game is out there existing, bringing in passive income, something which is the lifeblood for most other industries. Literature, music, film. We hear story after story of the people within those industries lasting for years off of even a single hit. And if you're in games and you get laid off by Activision tomorrow, you're done. You're living in a very expensive area with a minimum amount of jobs, wondering where your next paycheck is going to come in, and you're instantly in that emergency space again. And the concept of piece of money is building up more and more bases to not have to be in dire straits, to not have to wonder where your next meal is going to come from, or to be able to preserve yourself against the rainy day that comes for all of us sooner or later. Let's say you put away $20 a month for a year. After you pay for rent and utilities, and you are living your life, and you're making stuff happen, at the end of the day, all you've got at the end of the month really to spare, including putting a little bit into your savings, if you could just look at what you have to spare, your disposable income, you have $20, and you put that away. After 12 months, you would have $240. Because this is a budget space, because this is a vision of success that no one is thinking about, no one is exploring, no one's asking what's the best $240 game to make. They aren't even asking what's the best $2,400 to make, best $5,000, $10,000 game to make. despite us having more resources than ever, to reach a global audience with games that cost exponentially less to make than they ever have, especially with the engines, tools, and asset stores at our disposal, especially with the collaborators surrounding us at any given time. So many of us are in a position that has never existed really with this much ease in game history. To reach the world with a game that costs exponentially less than it would cost to even make a book and promote it in enough circles to have it bring back a return on its investment. The $240 game, priced at $4.99, you take away Steam's cut. Yes, you have a smaller earning potential than Grand Theft Auto has in even half an hour. But you retain all your IP value. This is definitely not a game you're spending years making. It's likely one you spend months or even weeks making. You explore a design and production and limitation space that no one else is really investigating, and you find space for creativity within that. Your break-even point to have every copy that sells past that point just be money in your bank account that is working for you is 69 copies. Nice. What about the $200,000 game? What about the standard vision of how we're quote-unquote supposed to make video games? You price it at $19.99. You're making something bigger. You're making something with a much higher earning potential. It likely has publisher backing behind it. They take their cut. The platform takes its cut, but you also have the possibility for immense riches. However, in return for that potential, you also have a dev cycle that relies upon you working only on that thing, only within that budget for 2 to 4 years. Your break-even point is 14,296 copies sold at full price to start to make your first dime on it. And at that point, what you're considering is not just selling 15,000 copies roughly. What you're also considering is, do you sell it fast enough? Because most people who haven't especially shipped a game through a console or through a commercial service don't know this yet, but no matter what platform you're shipping on, the vast majority of platforms take between 1 to 4 months to send you your first check. So can you sell 15,000 copies in your first month? Because if you don't, you're kind of just screwed. You're kind of just immediately in a space where you've released a game, you have had over 6 figures placed into your trust and brought a unique and interesting, compelling, creative vision into the world. And you can't savor that. You have to immediately think, oh dear God, I hope I can find another deal to fund the next game, because otherwise I can't pay rent this month. Creativity cannot exist on a sustainable basis when it is constantly riding the edge of total success or abject failure. Smaller, better games kind of speaks for itself. If you are making something small, you are creating something of focus. You're not making a game about being a warfighter in open world rebellion against some fascist regime. You're focusing down to helping a single town confront fascist ideology. And then you're focusing even down further to say, what does it look like for a single household to battle this? What does that mechanic look like? What does this narrative look like? And then maybe you're focusing down even further to say, what does a single member of this family do, and how do they do it to exist within this world? Whatever version or vision of a game you have, making your own take on Dark Souls, going from thinking of it as an open world to stripping it down. Maybe you're thinking about how a single piece of armor, filtering through your own experience, what's most interesting to you, what you have the ability to make, you're like, how does a single piece of armor come to rest in a unique place in Dark Souls world? And you make a game about that. That has the possibility to be so much more interesting and finely crafted within its smaller size than attempting to reach the point of a From Software game and failing. Because you don't have the people, you don't have the money, and you don't have the expertise. You can make smaller, better games than anyone else even could. EA can't make a game for $240. That's not their burn rate for maybe even a day for a single employee, but you can. And in the process, you can make something better than they could ever imagine with profit margins that benefit you, your community, and everyone you work with to make games in a better, faster, and healthier manner. And this all comes from operating from the resources of the self. What is the time you have available? What is the money you have on hand? What are your skills, your interests, your knowledge, the collaborators right near you, including within EGaDS? What are your previous projects that you can plunder, or what's a project you can make specifically so it serves as a stepping stone for the thing you want to make? You'd be surprised how many people pull themselves into pieces making these, excuse my French, big ass projects when what they really care about is a single component. A composer says, I want to make the type of music you would hear in an old school 3D platformer. And they make an entire 3D platformer. They have to deal with collision and with level streaming and with animations for a bunch of bespoke characters and enemies and with dialogue systems. And all they wanted to do really was create something with the vibe of a 90s platformer and bring that into the world. They wanted to work on a specific component and bring themselves into a place where they aren't working from their interests, knowledge, or passions, their skills, but they take on the burden of all these prerequisites that don't in fact have to exist. Creativity is boosted by limitations, and if you take your limitations as gospel, your time, your money, your skills, your interests, your knowledge, your collaborators, your projects, you have the opportunity to find solutions that no one else would even consider and make games that the rest of the world looks at and attempts to copy because they've seen what you've built within your entire other frame of reference. This is not the type of talk this is the type of talk that advocates keeping your day job. Not because you are not worth not because your creative perspective is not worth really pushing and trying to make your dreams happen, but because if you don't quit your day job, yes, your day job may suck, but you know what? You can make a lot better stuff when you aren't worrying about paying the rent, and you deserve to make games for a lifetime instead of for 3 years before facing burnout or disaster. We can have an industry full of people who don't just make games for a living, but also have the 30-year career. Imagine the pain of an entire medium which doesn't get the benefit. Games is like what, is around like 50 years old, and the vast majority of people who were there at its inceptions don't work in this medium anymore. They're still alive. The vast majority of our quote-unquote heroes, the people in our pantheon, the people who started this, are still alive and not doing things. Because games is structured in such a way that it isn't built for it. We take for granted that it isn't built for that. And your most interesting work is not 3 years from now, it's 30 years from now. And you will only be able to bring it into life if you create from the perspective that gets you to that 30 years. Yes, we aim for making games for a living, from being creative for a living. It is a joy, a dream. It is something I thank God every day that I get to live. But so much of what I'm doing right now is specifically so if everything I'm doing fails tomorrow, I can still pay the bills. Because as much as I like what I'm making right now, nothing I'm doing is worth the destruction of an entire life, mine or anyone else's. You have an opportunity, especially as starting or as journeyman game developers, as journeyman creators, to choose in what way you are going to pursue your craft. I would humbly suggest that you create the environment that your craft is one you can pursue for a lifetime, even if the world falls apart around you. The power is in your hands. It is one that you are uniquely prepared to face and to use to its full advantage. And the only thing standing in your way is taking for granted that the most important part of self-funding better, smaller games is you. Prioritize you, and the rest will take care of itself. Thank you so much for listening. Let's not talk about utter disaster now. I'm Xalavier. Hi. I'm just seeing a stream of nices in the chat from when I said 69 copies a while ago, and that just makes me happy. I'm going to go back to that slide, even though I'm not streaming it anymore. I'm going to stream that slide specifically. There we go. This is a point at which ask me questions. Ask me about the real stuff. Hit me. I want to know what you want to ask, what you think about the games, what doesn't make sense to you about the way that games functions, and we'll talk about it for the remaining time that we have.
Yeah, so it looks like we have a text channel speaker questions that I think people will drop their stuff in, and any of y'all watching or tuning in right now, we can check from the Twitch stream too and read those out here. Looks like we've already got a question in the text channel. If you check that, and I'll check the stream too. We'll get a couple questions going because we got plenty of time. So, yeah.
What is your favorite part of game dev? My favorite part of game dev is actually one I prioritize finding very early, as soon as possible. It's one of the things I'm most thankful for in terms of having it as a priority in my practice. I knew I wanted to be in this industry and in making creative things for a living for as long as possible. So I prioritized finding what I actually cared about in terms of existing within an industry. That the form that initially I thought I wanted to write about games. So I pretended to be an adult as a child and became a games journalist. And then I continued to learn and grow within that foundation. And I realized I wanted to write for games, became a games writer. I realized that I cared about using multiple pieces of a game to tell a story and not just the writing. So I multi-classed into narrative design. And then I realized I really didn't care about touching every piece of a game, even all the narrative pieces. I just wanted to make sure the game shipped on time and on budget, and we all got to move on with our lives. So I multi-classed into production, biz dev, and direction. And now I have this very odd spectrum of things I do where I design, I direct, I write, I produce, I voice act, I do this giant spectrum of things, and all of my projects are angled towards specifically putting me where I want to be on each project I work on, which is as a facilitator and enabler. I find the most joy in game dev from from establishing a creative vision and finding interesting solutions to solving the problems that come to bring it into being, and enabling the people who work alongside me towards that creative vision to do their best work to bring that thing into light in ways I couldn't have even imagined if I was working by myself. So now that's what I get to do, because I got to figure, because I prioritized giving myself the space to figure out what I wanted to do. Now that's what I do across as many projects as I work on. And when I do something I don't want to do, I also know the exact cost that will take to me in terms of fatigue and whether I can take it on in the first place. Know yourself so that you can continue your creative career as long as possible. And if you have that in mind, you're going to go pretty dang far. An Airport for Aliens Currently Run by Dogs is coming along really dang well. It is targeted for an early 2021 release, and it just hit its alpha. You can go to every airport planet in the Dog Airport game universe, travel between them, ride wind currents on the elf planet of Dogdrazil, walk beneath the street lamps of Patsville, the Noir planet, and then bop back to the Marinara Trench and try to swim in the waters, which may or may not be blood.
I think there are some more questions in the speaker questions chat. Alex asked or I guess we already answered that one. Diego asked, how is an airport for aliens currently run by dogs coming along?
I answered that.
If you have. Okay, cool. And then I asked, what inspires your game concepts?
For me, I find an interesting limitation or theme, and then I do not start a project until I have figured out exactly what that should look like. So for an airport for aliens currently run by dogs, and for all of my games in general, I'm aware one of the largest costs to game production is questioning assumptions after they've been laid down. So if you say you're making a single player sword fighting game and then you add multiplayer, everything changes. Everything breaks. Everything's on fire. You're going to be spending way more money. Then if you decide, oh, actually, this is going to be a single player game again, that's potentially even more money, time, and iteration. That's why you see games that take 4, 6, 8 years to make. It isn't because it took 8 sheer years to make that in the vast majority of cases. It's because you had to find the version of the game that you could bring to being within the 2 years. If you knew that at the beginning, you would have made that game originally. So I think very carefully about what a game is on a fundamental level. What interests me, what I care about, what is the limitation that makes it feasible to build at the scale and that I'm interested in working in. And I work that out, and I find a team, and we start building that thing together. Beneath the surface, Train Scaffold is not just making an airport for aliens currently run by dogs. This micro studio, using what I like to call the constellation model, is working on quite a few things all at the same time simultaneously. And that's enabled by the working processes we put in place and the game concepts and the way in which they're being explored. How relevant / true is this in your experience, says Sage? It's from Jake Burkett's GDC talk, for those wondering. For the formula for minimum sustainable success. It's very, very accurate, which is why you want to release more games.
like when you look at something like Among Us, playing the numbers game, your chance of hitting an Among Us with your very first game, or let's say a Phasmophobia, which just came out and is consistently at the top of the Steam bestsellers charts, that's very, very slim. But if you release, and it's even more slim if you release one game every 10 years, working on it, fine crafting it, making it your magnum opus, the magnum opus. Because as soon as the rubber hits the road, all games are built on compromise. All games are built on finding what is the version of it you can bring to life. Problem solving. That's my favorite piece of game development. So coming from that perspective, if you're making 10 games in 10 years, as opposed to one game in 10 years, you suddenly have 10 shots to have something that, by virtue of doing well, not just covers the cost of all the other cool things you got to bring into being during that time, but also exceeding that point makes your business profitable. This is how publishers work. The vast majority of publishers don't have every single game they release do well. In fact, most games or products in general, especially in creative settings, regardless of their quality, most things either do okay or they fail. So publishers are working on distributing their risk by putting money and production expertise and marketing into various places. And if one of those things booms and explodes, it more than pays for everything else. And all those things that are failing or just doing okay, also by virtue of just existing, build up a base of sustainability for their bottom line that puts them in a position of financial success, even if most of their things don't even hit a point of it being a hit. Most indies and most game developers in general don't take that approach. They do the big bet. They work on a single thing for several years, and they cast it into the void and hope for the best. So especially if you as an independent developer are making games in terms of creating a basis so that you can continue to make things even if the things you're making aren't doing that well, and give yourself the chance for a hit, at a certain point it just makes sense. Ashley asks, how do you find / select the team members you're working with? I universally, this might not be the best thing to say in a university group, but I don't look at what college they went to. I don't look at most bits of credentials. So let's say they've won an award or they're on a 30 under 30 or whatever else. That's all well and good, but it doesn't really matter. For me, what matters is this a person who ships things? Is this a person who makes things happen and finishes what they start? And does their approach to development, does their approach to the specific piece of their craft, whether it's engineering or art or anything else, does it fit the creative vision for the project? Again, this is a really great point for having multiple things in your portfolio or shipping more things in general, because if I can see you've only worked on a single game and it doesn't fit what I need for a project at that time, there's a very good chance I might not even just have the time to risk that you'll be able to find and make the thing that I want for the thing that I'm making now. But if you worked on 30 things and I see one thing that stands out and I see your general approach and that you make good stuff and that you do stuff consistently, I'm like, that's a person I need to work with. The vast majority of people I've worked with thus far on my own projects aren't big names. They're just deep. I'm not looking for prestige. They're just deeply creative, consistent, and honestly good people who are making things in such a way that they slot right into what I'm already building. So if you're a nice person, and not just nice in terms of being polite, but I mean specifically, don't be racist. If you ain't a racist and you generally an empathetic person and you are making and finishing things on a regular basis, that speaks more for you than any grade you can ever achieve. Like I'm a dropout. I didn't finish college, so I couldn't care less about a grade in a thing. What I care about is what you made in it and how you made it and why you made it. To that degree, or to that point, the more you can explain how and why you make things, the better you're going to do in any interviewing situation. So if I ask, hey, why is, for a sound designer, why did you use this specific instrument here? What was the effect that you wanted to introduce? What was the purpose of it? And you can explain that. If you have an intentional creative practice, even if I don't agree with what you've done or need what you've done for the project I'm working on, I know that you're the type of person who, if I give you feedback on something, like there's a piece of this track I don't like, or a piece of it that doesn't fit what we're planning for the project, I know that you have the perspective and the intentionality and the self-awareness to be able to correct from that point. So if you're especially an instinctive creator, get used to being able to describe that instinct, because it will make you a much better collaborator, and also means like in interview situations, like I get to have a really good time chatting over why and how we build and make things with the people I work with. And that is because all of them have a universal ability to discuss how and why they do things. It just makes for better conversations too. How do you stay consistently motivated to work creatively? Says, I'm thankful, Jake. Organization to the umpteenth percent. It is really overwhelming to see a giant tower of things in front of you to do. But if you can break that tower down and figure out exactly what you need to do at any given moment, it puts you in a position to get less demoralized and to stay out of a creative rut or pit. A principle that I got from my dad that has been very useful in that respect. My dad was in the military. Is something he called glass ball, rubber ball. A glass ball is anything that if it drops, it shatters. It goes everywhere. It's cutting up your feet. You have to stay out of the kitchen for the rest of the night. It's a bad time. A rubber ball is something that if it's dropped, you don't want to drop it, but it will bounce again. And most tasks can be divided into one of those two things. If you can figure out what are your glass balls and your rubber balls at any given moment and do the same for the people around you, you're going to be able to self-produce. You're going to be more organized. You're going to be able to, if you can do that accurately, it will help you even in terms of leading teams and leading and assisting others. And it will just help make your own giant tower of tasks make more sense. You'll know at any given moment, because of what the project needs, this is what I need to do right now. And quietly, even if it's not officially noticed, quietly and visibly, everyone's going to thank you for it, because figuring out priority of things is hard. It takes a lifetime to master it. There's still times I get it wrong. And when you get it right, hot dang, it feels like your creativity is moving smoothly. And when games and creative practice is already so risky, having the possibility for just smooth creativity having a process that feels like it's just humming along is the most magical thing in the world. And I see someone is typing. Do you value team members posing questions or providing answers more? Which would you say you tend to fall into more? Lately, I've been trying to contextualize any design suggestion with the issue I'm trying to address. This is actually an interesting question because it gets to something that I have encountered in my contracting career, which is that sometimes people really don't like being asked a bunch of questions about their creative practice. Maybe they can't explain what they're doing or how they're trying to do it. Maybe they just maybe there's an element of insecurity where they want you to come in and bring an air of authority. Whatever the case may be, or very early in my career, I would approach every job like a puppy dog, being like, "Hey, what are we trying to do? How can we do it more collaboratively? How do we solve this thing? What do you want to happen? How can I help you get to that place?" I was all about asking a lot of questions and being ready to pivot and make stuff happen in whichever way would help the team at large. And I had some very nasty surprises in finding that sometimes there were teams that really didn't like that. So now I more judiciously. Sometimes I play it by ear. Sometimes I come in through the door with a more solution-oriented perspective, saying, from my expertise, this is what I would advise. Sometimes I spend a copious amount of time asking questions. And if I have like 5 hours for a task and I spend 4 hours asking questions and gaining information and understanding where the team is at so I can solve the problem in the last hour, then I will be more effective than if I spend 5 hours throwing stuff at the wall. Every situation is unique and different. So I highly recommend playing by understanding what someone really wants out of you at any given time for whatever job you're doing, which is really important. What I'd say I usually want from my team members is I trust the people I work with to have a lot of expertise that I do not. I at all times try not to be the smartest person in the room. And by the vast majority of the time, I'm not. The people I know have really deep experience and knowledge in areas I can't even fathom. So I'm asking them questions. And at any point, what the most important thing to me in terms of communication with a team member is ability to explain their perspective, their practice, and their expertise so that we can find a solution from that point of view. Because I don't have the point of view of a sound designer, but if a sound designer can explain to me why and how they're doing something, or a way in which we can have a guiding overall principle for the game or whatever else, I'll have enough information as a team leader to make an informed decision on what we should do from there. So, knowing your field on a deep level and the consequences of your actions on every piece of the production cycle, I would say is the most important piece of all. If I speak to a narrative designer and they don't know that writing a sequence in a particular way makes their cutscene 10 times more expensive than another approach, especially because I work at more because I work from a very problem-solving mindset, as from a very I wouldn't say rigid, but a definitely very focused perspective on feasibility and finding smart, budget-conscious solutions. If someone isn't conscious of how their proposal can inflate or deflate the budget of a game, or affect the overall quality of the work, it harms my ability to help the team as a whole make decisions. It's why I tell every narrative designer that I meet, the most important thing you can do as a narrative designer, yes, be a good writer and be a good and have a good design practice, of course, but learn the way in which animators, artists, sound designers, producers, marketers learn the way in which everyone speaks and the perspective that they have, because it will give you the knowledge to, again, games development in large part being about solving problems with the things you create as opposed to just creating things in a vacuum. It will give you the ability to make sure that the answers and solutions you provide efficiently and effectively solve the problems that are actually being presented to you. And 2 people are writing. How do you identify, Dane says, when a suggestion makes sense but would just result in a different game? How do you evaluate whether this new iteration or pivot is too far from the base idea? That is a experience point. It's one of expertise in one's field. It comes from knowing a lot of games and not a lot of other mediums. So knowing a story suggestion would pull it very close would change the genre of the story from noir to romance or from romance to sci-fi. This is the point where a whole lot of knowledge comes in and a lot of creative instincts. So if you don't currently know that thing, or if that is an area in which you can improve that ASAP, because that is something you're going to be using your entire career. Again, I've even worked with artists who didn't produce like award-winning art, but because they have the design instincts of what is going to be more, what is going to how is one change going to impact an entire sequence? This is really effective in comics. When I am working with an artist there, I am a writer. I script something, I bring it to them. I feel really good about that script. When they come back to me saying, hey, I added a panel here because this panel in between these panels makes the layout look better and also communicates the storytelling idea that we were pushing for in the first place. It demonstrates that they know what I'm looking for and what I'm going for in terms of the direction of the thing. And it also demonstrates the expertise of their practice in terms of suggesting a solution to not even solve a problem, because the problem doesn't exist. They could write it, they could draw it as written, and it could potentially come out fine, but it becomes better when they add their own experience there. And that's the best part of working in a collaborative medium, having someone else add their perspective and their knowledge to your content, assets, and perspective to make something that you're mutually working towards, but is better than any of you could have done individually. How do you communicate your idea with the other team members when they haven't developed that breadth of creative knowledge? I would say, Dane, at that point, you want to contextualize it within what they know. So if you know your creative director is incredibly inspired by anything by Michael Bay, they speak entirely in Michael Bay references, then saying, hey, making this decision is going to make it feel more like Transformers than Pain and Gain, or it's going to make it feel more like Armageddon than 13 Hours, or it'll make it feel like more 13 Hours than Armageddon, or vice versa. Contextualize it within their experience and what they know, because not only is it won't be exact, but it's exponentially more useful to communicate according to what someone knows than trying to instruct them on something that they don't. If I tell you a solution related to a game you've never played, or a movie you've never seen, or a comic you've never read, there's only so much that I can communicate what that means on a very deep level. So think about the references of the people around you and try to match them as much as possible. Jared asks, how do we push for better working conditions in the industry, especially as someone who has little power or notoriety? What I would recommend, Jared, is realize that the conditions that we're discussing are far more complex than a single buzzword or scandal. And what I mean by that very specifically is almost every starting game developer or student game developer or early career game developer I know asks about crunch. Hey, do you do crunch? Hey, does this studio do crunch? How do I avoid crunch, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Because everyone's heard the term crunch, and that's one of the most useless terms in games, because what you're asking, yes, it's worth asking, do you crunch or not? But that doesn't give you adequate information about what your actual working conditions are going to be like. Someone saying, hey, we don't crunch, doesn't mean that in the finishing stages of the game, you aren't going to be working 80-hour weeks, because the typical way in which they work is to do a lot of pre-production and a whole lot of experimentation, and then a brutal death march for the last 12 months to bring the game to market. Them saying we don't crunch because they don't crunch for the other 4 years of development doesn't help you. Asking, hey, am I going to get sexually harassed at this workplace? Most workplaces, you would at least hope, wouldn't tell you, hey, yeah, you're going to get sexually harassed here. But knowing how much longevity members of the team, especially who are femme identifying or positioned, how long they stick around will make a big difference. There's certain studios that are always hiring for narrative professionals, and that can be fine, but it can also be a warning flag when you see, oh, every single writer or narrative designer who has worked here leaves within 12 months. The questions and the conditions that we face are more complicated than a single vector of abuse or of exploitation. So the easiest way to start pushing for better working conditions is to train yourself and the people around you on the terms and the terms and the areas to ask about that will give you the information you actually need about whether or not a workplace is actually healthy or how long you can survive there. Because, I mean, frankly, there's some quote unquote bad workplaces where people have happily worked there for years, decades, and it's all because the studio happens to work in a way that works with their own brain and with their relationships and with their lives. If you know that those answers for you, as well as the questions to ask to ensure, is this place going to work with my brain? All the better. And that was going to give you the actual tools you need to evaluate whether you want to collaborate with a given entity, as opposed to the more simple question of, will you be taking advantage of me? You're very welcome, Jared. And another message is being written. I'm just going to stare at this Discord. This Discord is typing notification. There we go. Is an airport for aliens currently run by dogs not also for the dogs? The dogs use the service extensively. Back before I thought that, yes, actually game titles can be too long, the original tagline of the game was going to be an airport for aliens currently run by dogs. First there were humans, then there were aliens, then there were dogs, to demonstrate how the humans and the aliens are gone. And that isn't really important to talk about how or why. What matters is that the dogs are here now, and that is the focus of the universe. So with that context in mind, there's a whole bunch of alien airports across the universe, but they're run for and by the dogs at this point. I also think it is quite nice. Thank you. What Michael Bay films do you recommend watching for the next movie night? Michael Bay isn't my biggest expertise, although I think he's done some good stuff. So, like, almost everyone, regardless of the popular opinion about them, has done something worthwhile or something that you can pull out of. But, oh, snap, I didn't know he did the original Bad Boys. Yeah, watch Bad Boys. It has Martin Lawrence and Will Smith in it. They're called Bad Boys. I don't know how else to recommend this film to you. It's got the Bad Boys in it. We will be watching Bad Boys. I'm so glad to hear that I've made a difference. The Bad Boys difference. What kind of food do you like making? I really like baking in particular. For some reason, it works with my brain. So if you need a dough made, if you want, pizza dough, fluffy crust of some kind, biscuits, cookies. If it is in the breaded realm, I am very enthusiastic about it. How avant-garde / experimental do you like to get with your projects, if at all? I am shipping a game about a universe of simulated airports run by stock photo dogs on a next-gen console. So I would say experimental is within my scope. I would say the point that I'm very intentional and careful about at all times is riding the line between experimental and commercial. There is a point between avant-garde where avant-garde becomes inaccessible to people or just simply isn't compelling. An airport for aliens, a lot of people have joked with me about making an airport for aliens currently run by cats. But if I made it about cats, the way in which even the title strikes the brain of the average player would make the game less mainstream and therefore less accessible to a greater audience. So there's cats in an airport for aliens currently run by dogs, but dogs are the focus of the piece because of the creative instincts I have about how to make sure that the game is weird but also still compelling and accessible, even if you aren't someone who's into quote-unquote experimental games. A really good thing to study here as far as understanding that line is actually the original slate of Adult Swim things. See what stuff got popular, what stuff didn't, when, how, and why. Harvey Birdman did a lot better than 12-ounce Mouse, and both are very, very good. But 12-ounce Mouse is a Lynchian fever dream, papercraft nightmare. And it's very, very good for that. But also, when you start to understand what's happening on the screen, that probably means that you haven't slept enough and you need to sleep immediately. On the other hand, Harvey Birdman is a recontextualization of Hanna-Barbera properties within the context of a superhero who is now a lawyer. And it's delightful, and it had much more commercial success and more name brand recognition due to its blending of the weird and of the commercial. We are commercial artists. If you are a commercial artist if you wish to do this for a living or have it be a piece of a living, have it be part of a consistent lifetime commercial practice. So if anything, this is the best time to be building up that muscle within yourself to know how far is too far. I think, would you say that certain projects shouldn't provide a release date during development? I remember Noida's release date on Steam was when it's done, says Gran apostrophe T. Hey, can I just say Grant? Is it Gran? I don't.
It's a joke. Yes, it's just Grant.
Well, now I just want that to be a Dragon Age NPC. Grant.
Nice.
Just make it as awkward as potentially possible. Projects providing release date during development. Your stated release date, in my experience, is far less worrisome than the state of your initial reveal. So Noida was able to say when it's done, and people understood it because they communicated very, very early on, not just why you want to play it, but how being a world where every pixel is simulated in some way, shape, or form, that's complex. It takes time, and bringing those full things to bear in those systems online is going to have consequences, gonna take time. If your initial reveal does not communicate, if your initial reveal tells people when it will be available, but does not communicate why they should care yet, then either your reveal or the project itself needs more work. Because someone should be able to communicate if they do care about it, even if they like you, right? If they support you personally, if it's like your parents or the people in your life who are your eternal champions, if they can't even tell someone else why that other person should care about the project, then something has disconnected. For me, I have several taglines that I use for the project, depending on who I'm speaking to communicate why they should care about it. If they're a dog lover, I say it's a open world comedy adventure game about going through a simulated universe of airports run by stock photo dogs, and you can pet any dog at any time with an infinite number of hands. If I'm talking to someone who's very into immersive sims and comedies and so on and so forth, I'll expand on the bit about how the entire universe is simulated. Every boarding pass is connected to a actual physical location in the world, and you can manipulate time to catch your flight to reach that destination or to otherwise advance the world state in such a way that you can combine the effects of items to do really weird and interesting things. Make sure you have those touch points ready before your release date, because otherwise you're not going to be in the position to, when you hit your release date, tell people why to care then either, unless something has drastically changed. Jared is typing. The one place I would say provide a release date is release dates, again, aren't the most important thing in the world, especially in a digitally distributed live service environment. What you need to do is provide as much consistency or foresight as possible about update times. So Don't Starve has had an incredible commercial and creative journey. And so much of that was built directly around Clay for Don't Starve, and then I think for Oxygen Not Included, speaking consistently and often about when people can next expect to see something from the game. Yes, we may spend years in development, but every week or every 2 weeks or every month on time, there's going to be a new update. Whether it's content or simply telling you what will happen next, you know that it isn't being abandoned. When that sort of tentpole is in place, it doesn't just give you the fuel to discuss your project with people. It allows the defenders of your project to come forward when someone's like, hey, there hasn't been an update, and say, the developer updates every 2 weeks. The next update is in 3 days. Chill out. And that's the end of that question being answered.
Does anyone else have any questions they'd like to ask? I know we've been talking for a while, but feel free to. Epic. Yes, it is epic. Well, are there any questions on stream? I accidentally exited it out a minute ago. Let me pull it back up.
Wait, app update available? No.
Well, I don't see any questions
All right,
on stream, from my point of view.
Okay, good.
Does anyone else have any last little things they'd like to ask in the chat? Feel free to do so. Speaker questions.
Blue Thutlu says, I really find the concept of pizza money games interesting. I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind as we grow as devs. Yeah, it is a concept that's hard to describe because what I'm describing is kind of the anti-dream, right? I'm not describing the here's the 10 quick steps to indie stardom. I'm describing, hey, what about a future where you kind of just expect most of your games not to do all that well, but if they sell any copies at all, you can buy pizza with it. It doesn't sound as appealing as here's the 10 steps to making $1 million, but let me tell you, my approach gets you a lot more pizza in the long run. Guaranteed pizza. After those 69 copies, every single copy you sell gets you that pizza. And here's the thing. If the 69 copies games fails, and this is what boggles me about why these opportunities for micro development and smaller, better games are being passed over. If the game that costs you $240 to make doesn't pan out, that's less than the cost of buying a next-gen console. And you've got something new for your resume, and you brought something new into the world, and you learned something. I like having no lose scenarios personally,
and that seems like a scenario that's very easy to not lose with. I haven't even seen Friday Night Lights, and I just keep having that quote in my head of clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose, and I don't know why. I've never seen the show. I haven't seen a single episode. And it's really getting to me at this point. Clear eyes, full of pizza, can't lose, says Ollie. Yeah, if you could make that the name of this Twitch video archive in hindsight, I'd appreciate it. That sums it all up. Clear eyes, full of pizza, can't lose. Now there's a lot of very entertaining pizza emojis being put into the chat.
Yeah, we usually have pizza night for these meetings, but not anymore. You know how it is. Like,
I mean,
so I think so.
Now I'm just missing pizza.
I just ate a whole pizza. This is a pizza night.
Here I am giving these talks and sharing my expertise with the EGaDS game dev group, and you're just munching away on pizza by yourself, not even sharing.
It's prosciutto from Trader Joe's.
And now you're elaborating on the delicious pizza you had by yourself. I'm stunned at this level of you've thrown a gauntlet in my face.
I was just inspired by the talk, like I had to eat some. I'm sorry.
Can we get a hashtag? Hashtag share pizza Grant in the chat.
All right. I'm gonna go start working on my twit longer to explain this. What do you do? No. No.
This is the revolution. This is the face of the revolution.
No.
Share pizza, Grant. Come on.
Oh no.
Your prosciutto pizza.
I ate it all, okay? I'm sorry. It's all gone. It's all gone. I ate the entire pizza. Which is like,
we all thought the revolution would be against Mason. We were wrong.
Wait, who told? Oh, I see.
Grant sharing. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's good.
Who said that? You're getting
Ashley.
timed out. Who said that? Oh, it's Ashley. Crap. I can't time her out.
Can't time out another mod.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast.
Yeah, dude, honestly, like, your whole perspective was really, like, I think it was really eye-opening to a lot of people, because, like, I think that's kind of you're right, that is, like, the goal, is Toby Fox, right? Like, that's what a lot of some of us might, like, see as, like, the goal. But this is a really good kind of, like, putting stuff into perspective.
And I'll say, like, one of the pieces about this that means so much to me is the people who saw this talk today, like, we're around the same age. I want to, like, get together after the plague in, like, 30 years from now at a GDC or at some PAX down in or some event down in Austin, and be able to talk about the things I'm making. Like, it's going to be heartbreaking if, for this generation of game developers,
is going to have the same levels of burnout that the previous generations have had, to the point that, I'm going to be 50 something years old, hopefully still making games, and everyone I'm talking to is still in their 20s, still making things from the perspective of someone who's only been in the industry a couple of years as opposed to decades. We deserve the possibility of future companionship, future knowledge sharing, and ability to build.
Yeah, I guess for like me personally, like I definitely like it's much harder to make like a smaller game for me. That makes like not very much sense, but
Oh,
like,
it does.
but yeah, I'm sure you understand. Like it's hard to just say I'm just gonna work on this for 2 months and finish it, or like yeah, because
It is. It's the problem. Not really of. I wouldn't say. Maybe origami isn't a good term, but it's. Um, there is a distinct challenge to building things within a small space. I've even spoken to people who have said, "I can't design a small game," and that may be true, but that is not a badge of pride. That is a that is shows an opportunity to grow, right? Because if you can't think of small games or small solutions, it puts you in a box of creativity that means you can't work at various scales. That when it comes time to think of even a solution for a single thing, and your first thing is like, okay, whole new game system, let's layer it in. It means that you're in a city full of tight streets and blind alleys. You are a semi-tanker truck. Be an agile smart car. Dart down those alleys. Run over those pedestrians. The power is in your hand.
wait,
I can, all of this advice is sponsored by the EGaDS game group. I am not legally liable. They are taking on all of my legal liability for tonight.
All right. No. Time. No.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we actually got 20 minutes left. If you still have those secret slides, I just remembered. Or if you need to go, you may go. It doesn't matter to us. We really appreciate your time that you've spent with us. Love to have you back in the future. Yeah, this was great.
Liability is on the house tonight, says Ashley, and I'm replying back, the house is always liable, as a variant on the house is always wins. Are we still on Twitch?
Yes. Do you want to take down the?
If we take down the Twitch, I can show you some secret slides.
Ooh. All right. Well, if you're on the Twitch, hop in the server. I guess I don't know, but we're gonna be ending it here. Thanks for
joining us, y'all.